afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News Livestream on this, a Wednesday, October 12th, 2022. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a little bit about my co-host. You know, folks, that today is National Bring Your Teddy Bear to Work Day, and my friend did not bring a teddy bear to work because he's already so darn cute. He is the He-Man with a hammer. He is the Khaleesi of Calgary. He is Syd Fizzard. How you doing there, Syd?
I'm doing all right. It's an absolute pleasure to be joining you today, and of course, thank you to all our viewers. But before I came out here to Calgary, for a good amount of time, me and David Menzies, we'd hit the streets, we'd hit the road, and we'd be covering stories. I'd be his guy behind the camera, and there was a lot of fun chats we had.
Oh, we had great times. And you know, one of the greatest things about driving anywhere with Syd, especially if you're in a residential neighborhood, is in another life, Syd was a roofer. So he'd always point out, oh, those are cheap roofing tiles. Oh, those are very expensive. That must have cost a fortune. I got a whole education in terms of the types of roofing materials I should buy. By the way, he said, when you were a roofer back when, if you showed up to work today bringing a teddy bear, how would that go over with the crew?
It wouldn't. I'd be going home. They'd be driving off to wherever they wanted to go.
You know,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, no, we. Yeah.
But you know, today I think we're in a climate that, even in a very professional setting, if you brought a teddy bear to work, no one dare say anything. In fact, Syd, I would bet you that if you showed up to work wearing a teddy bear costume, again, nobody would dare say anything for the potential Ontario Human Rights Tribunal case that would follow for the furry phobia allegations that would emerge, such as the world we live in. So, anyways.
Well, let me add one thing there. Is that I could see a lot of maybe the office folk, people who go to the office every day, 9 to 5. That's their entire life. You know, you don't really think about your safety every day as much. Like when you're a roofer, you're on the roof every day. You're wondering, am I gonna fall? Am I gonna die? Like these are real questions. You're stuck in an office for 24/7 your entire life. Well, your mind goes into all sorts of places that otherwise it should not be.
Oh, 100%. Well, in any event, Syd, why don't we get down to business? Actually, before we do, usually my co-host is the lovely and talented Sheila Gunn Reid, our beloved chief reporter, and she usually lays out the ground rules in terms of, if we have to say adios to YouTube because there are some subjects that are too hot to handle. Well, there might be one on this one. So do you want to lay down the law in case we have to say adios to our YouTube audience?
Well, I'm as many know, I'm still fresh to the live streams, but we have our YouTube live stream, Rumble, Odyssey, Getter, are some of the other places that we're going. And if you want to send us live chats, I think you can do that on YouTube, but maybe the studio will correct me, David. Maybe you can correct me. But nonetheless, if you're going to be watching throughout the live stream, then I highly recommend you get off YouTube now because, as David mentioned, there is some stuff that you could say we're going to be towing the line. But again, send your chats in, and David, maybe you want to fill some blanks I missed.
Indeed. YouTube has already demonetized us for absolutely no reason. They said we violated the terms and conditions of their health and safety policy. That was a policy item of like 38 pages. Our lawyers went through it with the proverbial fine-tooth comb. They couldn't find anything that we violated. They said, you're still demonetized. So we don't want to be deplatformed. It's kind of like a love-hate relationship. It's like my relationship with the 407 electronic toll highway, Syd. Man, I love how it moves you. Virtually no time do you run into gridlock, but wow, when you get that bill in the mail the next month, you sometimes suffer from buyer's remorse. And much like YouTube, over 1.5 million YouTube viewers, and we love that, and we love the reach, and we love the comments we get. And by the same token, like you said, we have to watch what we say on certain subjects, such as the 2020 election. If you raise questions about the authenticity of the election, that is an intolerable sin. By the way, you can raise questions about the integrity of the 2016 election. That's okay. And of course, you can't go off the reservation in terms of the medical necromancer official position when it comes to COVID and vaccines. That is a third rail topic as well. So I think we do have one COVID-related thing, and we'll save that to last so we can stay on to YouTube as long as possible. But one of the videos I think we should get to, because it is in your neck of the woods, and it is now Premier Danielle Smith on the unvaccinated. Quote, "They're the most discriminated against group that I've ever witnessed in my lifetime," end quote. Well, good golly, Miss Molly, you'd think that she just uttered profanity in church with some of the reaction by the usual suspects in the typical circles. But why don't we throw to a video of Danielle Smith saying something I think is completely reasonable and just, and then we'll get your take on it, Syd.
The community that faced the most restrictions on their freedoms in the last year were those who made a choice not to be vaccinated. I don't think I've ever experienced a situation in my lifetime where a person was fired from their job, or not allowed to watch their kids play hockey, or not allowed to go visit a loved one in long-term care or hospital, or not allowed to go get on a plane to either go across the country to see family or even travel across the border. So they have been the most discriminated against group that I've ever witnessed in my lifetime. That's a pretty extreme level of discrimination that we have seen. I don't take away any of the discrimination that I've seen in those other groups that you mentioned, but this has been an extraordinary time in the last year in particular. And I want people to know that I find that unacceptable, that we are not going to create a segregated society on the basis of a medical choice.
Syd, your thoughts?
Well, it's nice to hear. I mean, the fact is, I came here right before Jason Kenney announced his vaccine mandates implementation. So I came to Alberta and was immediately betrayed, I guess you could say. I just wonder, is she going to betray us in the long term? Is she going to stand by what she says now? Is there going to be amnesty for the individuals who were ticketed and charged and have otherwise for the last 2 years had their lives ripped apart because they wanted to live a normal life? Well, I don't know what more to add. It's unfortunate what we've gone through over the last couple of years, and maybe there'll be some amends made, but what do you think?
Well, Syd, we can't read somebody's mind, and when it comes to the issue of betrayal, time will tell. But if I was a betting man, and I am a betting man, as my depleted bank account can testify, I am betting that Danielle Smith is being true to her word here. First and foremost, the reason why we're calling her Premier Smith and we're not saying the words Premier Kenney anymore is precisely what happened, that betrayal, that abridgment of rights, whether it's a common Albertan not being allowed to travel, participate in sports, even losing his or her job, or the more flagrant cases, Pastor Art, for example, which is he's just batting 1,000 right now in the courts as he goes through all those completely bogus charges. I'm sure Danielle Smith is savvy and has the kind of intellect that realizes that she is in the position precisely because Premier Kenney bent the knee and capitulated. And I also want to say to, those like the NDP that are screaming at her, oh, how dare you use the word, discrimination. Well, how else can you put it? I mean, Syd, one of the biggest fallacies of those on the left, the COVID Karens, as I like to call them, that were insisting everybody get vaccinated, and so much for my body, my choice. I think that only applies, that chestnut, to a woman carrying an unborn baby. But the fallacy is, well, this idea of forced vaccination, nobody from the state is shanghaiing you, throwing you into an ambulance, injecting you. Well, yeah, that's true. But when you don't have the rights and privileges of a regular citizen, and we talked about flying somewhere and participating in sports, going to a school, for example, when you are given an economic death sentence, i.e., you get the jab, or if you don't, you lose your job, then of course that is coercion. Of course, that is the state acting as an agent for mandatory vaccination. So good on Danielle Smith being a voice for the unvaccinated, especially now as we learn more and more information about the vaccines, and I won't go into detail because, there's that YouTube thing. But in any event, Syd, I think this is a home run for her. And just think about it. If we lived in a society, my wife originally hails from South Africa. A big reason why her family gave up the wealth they had to come to Canada was because of the abhorrent apartheid system where black people, people of color, had less rights than the white minority. It's because it is an appalling discriminatory system. Now, if you substituted the word unvaccinated with, say, black or Muslim or Jew in terms of, oh, no, you can't fly out of the country, you're a fill in the blank. Oh, no, we're firing you because you are a fill in the blank. Of course it's discrimination. Of course it is a type of apartheid type system, Syd. So again, I hope Danielle Smith doesn't cower in the fear with the political and media generated backlash, because the majority, I think, have her back, especially the majority in your province, Syd.
Yeah, well, and as you mentioned, time will tell, right? We'll see if this is something that she truly believes and if she sticks to what she believes moving forward, or we're going to find out if she saw that there was a political incentive in taking the stance that she's taking now. And time will tell to see if she sticks to her morals. But we do also have a short clip of her during the beginning of her campaign launch, and I don't know if the studio can pull that up now, but it's something I hope for, to see that she will maintain the same approach that she has in the past. But unfortunately, like we saw with Jason Kenney, who would have thought that he would have done the things that he did over the last 2 years, 3 or 4 years ago? Who would have believed that? So that's the reason why I err on the side of caution. But I don't say this to doubt her intentions or to doubt what she says.
Well, we do indeed have that clip, Syd, so let's roll it.
Supporting freedom, the truckers, ending mandates. Alberta has also launched a challenge against the Emergencies Act, which we are, meanwhile, though, we're still seeing targeted charges against pastors and small business owners. Some of these are being dropped, fortunately. Others are still clogging up the courts. Are you willing to commit to staying charges and freezing ongoing investigations against those emanating from the lockdown? And how do you plan to restore faith in the courts and in politics?
Yes, we have to. We never should have come down on pastors the way we did. Every other jurisdiction, it seems, were able to enforce their measures without putting pastors in jail, and it's created so much division in our communities. So yes, we should drop those. We should also drop charges against small businesses. Part of the reason why we're enjoying the freedoms that we have today and the ability to go and watch hockey games is because there were some courageous people who stood up and said, you know what, there's another way to do this. Enough is enough. It took the politicians a little while longer to realize that. But now that they've realized that, I think part of the healing process is to make sure that some of those charges are dropped. The other thing we need to do, though, is we need to have a full reckoning about what happened, who made the decisions, why they made the decisions that they did, and why they didn't look at other evidence that was being put forward in other jurisdictions that took a different path. I'm not a huge fan of public inquiries. They tend to cost a lot of money and end up with a multi-page report that I question if anybody reads. But I think we could do hearings, multiple party hearings, where we could be talking to some of the key decision makers on a fact-finding mission to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I'm very supportive of Todd Loewen's approach. He's attempting to bring some provisions into the Public Health Act that would have the same kind of oversight on decisions of the legislature when it gets invoked as the Emergencies Act does. I think we saw at the federal level that it's a pretty extreme measure to invoke the Emergencies Act, but there are multiple checks and balances on that. We don't have those same checks and balances in the Public Health Act. And so I think we need to make sure that we do, so that people have some confidence that this won't happen again.
Syd, I think another reason why I believe Premier Smith says what she means and means what she says is that before she ran for the leadership of the UCP, keep in mind she was a broadcaster with the horribly woke radio network Chorus. And because of the limitations on what she was able to speak about, she resigned. She walked away. So that's an indicator before this gig became available that she's not all that down with the wokeism, cancel culture, politically correct mindset in society these days. And by the way, I should tell you, Sid, I mean, you know, it's funny. The Chorus station in Toronto, AM 640, you go back 20 years ago when it was rebranded as Mojo Radio, talk radio for guys. It was so irreverent. It was so fun. It was so entertaining. The ratings were a smash, but the managers capitulated to outside criticism and got fearful that the CRTC might retaliate. Now you have this totally woke radio station, I would say with the exception of Alex Pearson, whose name I almost forgot, and that's unforgivable because she was a colleague of mine at Sun News. It's abysmal, and the ratings reflect that. In the entire GTA, the last time I saw the ratings book, of all AM and FM stations, AM 640 was second from the bottom. What does that tell you, by the way? Yeah, we're going to go woke. We're going to sell stuff to people who aren't buying it. And what you end up doing is have a economic business plan that sends your station right to the sewer. But I go off on a tangerine as I want to do. In any event, this is why I said I'm betting on Danielle Smith to come through as the champion Alberta needs. And she's got a reminder, going back to what we said in the original segment, the reason why she's in that chair is because of how Premier Kenney inexplicably behaved during the pandemic.
Well, and you bring up the flip side of the coin, the wokeism, the toxic culture that manifests out of those kinds of ideologies. And well, this is what the Conservatives in Alberta are up against, is the Alberta NDP, of course, with Rachel Notley as a familiar name for many people. And these are the same people. I remember them calling many of the supporters or the convoy related individuals akin to terrorists. This is the kind of rhetoric they were edging on. And it really is a shame because they're putting down people who are struggling to survive just because they wouldn't conform to their own will of being. And I think we have a tweet there on Danielle Smith, and the Alberta NDP called on her to apologize over the unvaccinated comments. It's like, are you kidding me? Exactly.
And
let's see. Yeah.
I see that acronym there. Oh, now it's the 2S LGBTQA plus, right? How did that get involved in it? Can you read that tweet, Sid? Because my eyes are letting me down here.
Let's start from the top here.
Okay.
This province belongs to all of us, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, gender, or sexuality. All Albertans should feel safe in our communities, but hate-motivated crimes are on the rise in Alberta, and many people are living in fear. Yeah, I think about churches when she says that, or whenever whoever this person is says that. But the UCP has refused to take any meaningful steps toward reconciliation, refused to take real action to address racism in Alberta, and is the only government in history to roll back 2SLGBTQIA plus rights. The comments made by Premier Danielle Smith further divide our province and minimize the hate and violence towards racialized Albertans and the 2SLGBTQIA plus community. Danielle Smith needs to apologize for these comments. She has already demonstrated on her first official day in office that she is not ready to lead for all Albertans.
You know, that is absolutely stunning, Sid, because the fact that that tweet talks about regardless of sex, race, religion, etc., but not so much if you're unvaccinated. They don't mention that. They don't say status rather. So what I'm getting from this is the NDP is saying, you know what? It's okay. In fact, it's encouraged to discriminate against the unvaxxed. Those are the great unwashed, filthy masses. Those are the modern day typhoid Marys. But it's all these other groups that you're not allowed to discriminate against. That is absolutely pathetic. And here's the deal. Whether you are in government, bureaucracy, law enforcement, what have you, and you're getting that kind of pressure, you just say, take a long walk off a short pier. And if most of us, or at least more of us, Sid, did that we didn't bend the knee and capitulate, then we'd be much better off as a society, because this group of modern day Marxists, and that's what these people are, the world is not enough, to quote the title of a James Bond film. No matter how much you give, it's not enough. They want more, more, more. And so it'll be a colossal mistake if Premier Smith does bend the knee to these people, because that's a zero-sum game.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a shame as well that the NDP would even use these groups to advocate for what they want to advocate for, because oftentimes what they try and provide to, let's say, the trans community, in lieu of wanting to say the abbreviation, or the black community, let's say, is they have, like, sure, they do have real problems and there are issues that need to be addressed. And the NDP, the Liberals, what do? They come along and they say, this is what I'm fighting for because it's what those people need, instead of going over there and asking those people what they actually need. Yeah. It's like with the Native American community here. It's like, yeah, let's take a knee with a little teddy bear and then we'll go surfing right after, on Indigenous Day. Like, seriously, these people don't actually care about these groups that they claim to advocate for. And, I stumble on the abbreviation, and I genuinely don't mean it as an insult, because there are people in this category that do need help and support, but it's these people that would advocate for them, who would say what that they need, that are I think hurting everybody. And I mean, there is a lot to the sexual identity crisis, I guess you could say, going on in North America, but maybe we should get to an ad break before we touch on some of that.
Good point.
And I think we have one coming up here for one of our documentaries coming out soon. And the Trucker Commission, as you guys know, the Emergency Act came into place, and now there's going to be a response. But I think we have a trailer for one of our documentaries that we'll put on screen.
The values. You look at Western values in Western society, and these are values we could all relate to, but they're old world values of grit and community and perseverance.
It's a place where you can make a living with your back and your hands and a little bit of hard work. And it's a place of opportunity. And I think as Albertans, we're fiercely protective of that.
The world's energy crisis has been grabbing newspaper headlines. In a nutshell, we're running short of petroleum resources and the prices are zooming upwards.
My colleagues in the government and I have come reluctantly to believe that the price of oil in Canada must go up.
This was Alberta.
Origin of the Alberta separatist movement begins with the election of Pierre Trudeau as Prime Minister.
It was a deliberate and malicious targeting of the West, which suited Pierre Trudeau just fine, just like it suits Justin Trudeau just fine.
Sunny ways, my friends.
Blackface.
There is an actual hostile government towards Alberta.
Why did your dad give everyone in Western Canada the middle finger?
Really, in politics, you do have to make big decisions, and whenever you make big decisions, there's going to be people who agree with it and people who disagree with it.
Plenty of people want to leave this country.
It's not the kind of idea you'd expect to hear from someone who wants to win power and hold power. It is a radical idea.
And you would normalize the discussion. And so maybe Alberta wouldn't have to go, because maybe the rest of the country and the rest of the world would say, whoa, don't go. Will you accept these changes instead? That's what happened for Quebec.
There's no maple leafs west of the Manitoba border. Why do we have a maple leaf by unilateral decision on Canadian flags?
Think of how the American colonists were in 1775. That's how a lot of Albertans are today.
Well, Sid, if I do say so myself, I think we are knocking it out of the ballpark with these documentaries. Truly, the other side of the story that the mainstream media is not producing. In fact, they don't even want you to see this. And well done to you and your colleagues. Anyone going to this, I believe don't we have an airing of that coming up very soon, Ungovernable?
I think we might have a viewing of that tonight, but I believe it's albertadocumentary.com. Keen's produced video on Alberta separatism. I haven't seen it yet, so I don't want to comment too much on it, and I don't want to spoil anything, of course. But if you are looking for a live viewing, and I think eventually, or if not already, it'll be on Rebel News Plus, but go to albertadocumentary.com to find out more and maybe get some tickets, and some of us might see you in person.
And tonight's screening, it is indeed in Calgary, Sid?
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Okay, and do you recall what time?
No.
Okay.
albertadocumentary.com. You can find out all that information there, and I'm sure some of our team will be looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah, and I think there are still tickets left, folks. So if you are in the Calgary area, by all means, that is well worth your time. And we should mention, too, truckercommission.com, beginning tomorrow, Sid. We have a huge team of rebels in Ottawa for the inquiry on the Emergencies Act. I can't wait, Sid, because these people at the inquiry, they are testifying under oath. And I cannot wait until Minister Mendocino takes a seat. And the question I want to hear him answer, finally, under oath, is which members of law enforcement, which police chiefs told you to invoke the Emergencies Act? As you know, Sid, he has stayed true to that lie, if that's not an oxymoron. He's doubled down. He keeps saying that it was law enforcement that made the government do that way, but he's never provided the name of an officer, a chief, a law enforcement agency that made that declaration. What do you think he's going to do at this inquiry? Because to me, that is one of the biggest questions that still needs to be answered.
When a government official says that law enforcement told me I had to do something, I'm sorry, but that is a blatant lie on the period. Like, I don't even want to add anything to that. You are the governing official, and they provide you with advice. They provide you with feedback. They don't tell you what to do. So, cut the charade, and we're going to find out. And this commission, I'm very much looking forward to. It's truckercommission.com. If you guys want to help us out, we're going to be getting a little place. We're going to have a bunch of journalists sent out there. A whole team is going to be out there. So if you guys want to help us out in covering that and seeing what people really have to say, especially Trudeau, and he comes to take the stand, well, we're going to be there, but we need your help to do that. And please go to truckercommission.com to make that happen.
Yeah, and folks, we do things as modestly as possible. We're not going to a luxury hotel in Ottawa. We're going to a bed and breakfast in which we're going to share. I think we're going to have to double. Some of the Rebel News journalists are going to have to double up in the room. So it's going to be lean and mean. We respect your money. We respect your donations. And like I said, the feeling is if we don't go there, this might be a whitewash when it comes to the media coverage of what you're going to see in the lamestream media. So please, if you can, go to truckercommission.com, and if you're able to donate $1 or $3, that would be absolutely appreciated.
And,
okay. Go ahead, Sid.
You mentioned one thing there. We're not getting fancy hotels. Well, I think I know what sparked that comment, David. Who was in the fancy hotels in Ottawa when the convoy was there?
I am guessing. Well, who? I guess it was the police, right? Because I remember. I guess the most swank hotel I can think of in Ottawa is the Chateau Laurier, and I saw busloads of cops going there. And I mean, geez, compared to the kind of quarters law enforcement personnel might be used to, that was a real step up in terms of going from the outhouse to the penthouse, wouldn't you say, Sid?
Oh, to say the least. And look at what they did when they were there. So, honestly, I'm not surprised. Trudeau's putting his money where his mouth is when it comes to enforcement. But when it comes to, again, giving indigenous people cleaner water, well, he's nowhere to be seen.
No, good point. And another I guess, lost promise from the days of sunny days. And by the way, that was a 2015 promise, if I recall. I mean, here we are in 2022. This was supposed to be a thing of the past, undrinkable water on dozens of reserves in Canada, but it's still here. And in fact, I remember that disgraceful episode in which Prime Minister Trudeau mocked a native protester that went to one of his meet and greets. So it's, as Clara Peller of Wendy's used to say back in the 80s, where's the beef? Where's the beef when it comes to fulfilling these promises? What an absolute disgrace. So Syd, I'm looking over at some of the other, here we have something, a video. Why don't we run the video first? But it's Pierre Poilievre and all MPs should be advocating for COVID booster jabs for Canadians. Golly, what is that about? Let's roll the video. Oh, just 1 second. We got to cue it up.
Well, I should say, as we're queuing it up, the next one we should show right after is the Pfizer executive in, I believe it was the European Parliament, or a European Parliament member proposed a question to this individual. So maybe we should show that one right after.
That is amazing video. I'm just wondering if it's YouTube friendly. I'll weigh in on Mr. Producer's call on that one. But
I could say, well, we can show the headline, we can show the video, but let's definitely wait until we comment on that particular one and after we move off of YouTube.
Gotcha. Now I think we have the video queued up, so let's roll it.
Yesterday, the leader of the opposition went on CFRA radio here in Ottawa and said he had been twice vaccinated, which of course is the minimum requirement for him to step into the House of Commons. Wondering what kind of example do you think that sends, and would you say something to him about that, about whether he should be more outspoken about advocating for booster doses?
I think we should all be, and I will turn to Dr. Tam in a second. I think we should all be advocating for that. No, we all gain in having more people around us being up to date in their vaccination status. We all gain because that reduces infection. Elected members of Parliament who have access to the type of advice that Dr. Tam has been providing now for some time. Now, it's not as if we are not aware of the importance of being up to date in terms of vaccination. Members of Parliament have access to that information on a daily basis, through all sorts of exchanges. But
yeah, forgive me if I question the credentials of Dr. Tam. Said this is someone who can't say pregnant woman, but rather pregnant people. That's one hell of a doctor we got there in Ottawa. But again, at this stage of the game, why is the vaccination issue such an issue? And it was stated that Mr. Poilievre is double vax, and evidently that's not good enough. That's just the bare minimum requirement. I mean, you have some people talking about a new booster vaccinations in the future that might be on the requirement of once every 90 days, if you can imagine, which suggests to me, well, I better watch what I'm saying. We're still on YouTube. But Syd, what did you make of that?
Well, my biggest concern when it comes to that is, honestly, the health and safety of the vaccine is secondary. My primary focus is I want to make sure that I actually am able to have representation in government. And if an elected official, or if to be an elected official, you must jump through, X, Y, and Z hoops. You must cut your left arm off. Well, I don't want to be represented by that person who doesn't have two arms like me, because now they're specifically advocating from their stance. And no offense to anybody who's gotten their arm cut off, but that, I think, just makes the point is I am concerned about if every single member of Parliament was not only double vaccinated, but triple vaccinated and 3 boosters. And here, there are people who are unvaccinated. What representation do they have? Is somebody going to fight for what they need, their rights? And that's my biggest concern.
And, and I don't think I'm committing any kind of vaccine etiquette infraction here, Syd, but we know there are people who are being double vax plus 2 boosters that still get COVID. And, I think back several months ago, I think it was in the summer, and it was Dr. Carolyn Bennett, who's an MP for a Toronto riding, and she sent out a tweet, and it said that, unfortunately, I have tested positive for COVID. That's unfortunate. I don't wish anyone getting sick with COVID. And then she says, thank God I have my two jabs and my booster shot. And I guess the inference there, Sid, is that if she hadn't got that, it would have been much worse, the COVID. But Sid, how can we ever prove that? You can't prove it or disprove it, right? So, that seems to be the narrative, that even when people with 2 shots and 2 boosters still contract COVID, they're happy about it because their narrative is, I bet you if I hadn't done all that jabbing, I'm far more sick than I already am.
Oh, but don't forget, your vaccine keeps other people safe, right? I'm not saying that as a statement of fact for YouTube. I believe that's something I've heard, right? Is that, just like the mask, you get it for other people, stop the spread, reduce the transmission. So the one part of it is like, if I didn't get the vaccine, I would have died if I had COVID, right? There's this, crying they do about that, but then it is also the societal thing. And what are we finding out now about the transmission and about Pfizer? And I think there was a lawsuit where 2 of the vaccine companies are suing the other one, or one vaccine company is suing the other 2 because they replicated their vaccine. They basically took credit or stole the copyright, I guess you could say, information of the vaccine and used it for themselves. And what are we finding out? Well, we'll look at this video from Pfizer that I think we can pull up now. Long form Pfizer executive on the testing vaccine to prevent transmission.
All right.
So a question then for you, Ms. Small, where I would like a clear answer, please.
So there are no misunderstandings. Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market? If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? And I really want a straight answer, yes or no, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunisation before it's entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market. And from that point of view, we had to do everything at risk. I think our Dr. Bourla, even though he's not here, would turn around and say to you himself, if not us, then who? Dr. Bourla actually felt the importance of what was going on in the world. And therefore, as a result of that, we actually spent $2 billion at risk of self-funded money from Pfizer to be able to manufacture, first of all, research, develop and manufacture at risk to be able to make sure that we were in a position to be able to help with the pandemic. And I think that's why I feel very good when a recent paper from the Imperial College stated that in the first year of the rollout of vaccines, we saved 4 million people. So from that point of view, I feel that actually we were there when the world needed us to be able to make sure that we were able to help people around the world with vaccination as well as now oral treatment. I would hate to imagine what situation we would be in the world right now if companies like us did not take those risks, did not do clinical research and developments at scale in order to make sure that we could have a vaccine that we could roll out to the world. So I understand your frustrations, I really do. But I also hope at some point somewhere you also do appreciate what pharmaceutical companies have done in order to be able to roll out and deliver vaccines at such speed and scale.
Wow. Sid, if I may, the first thing that stands out, and I've heard that clip played over and over again, is when she says, quote, the speed of science, end quote. I've never in my life heard that phrase. I've heard of the speed of sound, the speed of light, but the speed of science. In fact, I would make the argument, Sid, that science is not a race. You come up with a hypothesis, and then you test it, and you do research, and the idea of a clock in the laboratory running is preposterous. And when it comes to vaccines, we know that it typically takes 10 years to get a vaccine developed, one that works. If you can do it in 5 years, that's considered grease lightning. So what the hell is she talking about when she refers to the speed of science?
She's talking about the speed of financing, David. She knew. If they were the first ones with a vaccine to the market, well, obviously they're going to have the biggest buy-in. They're going to make the most money. That is the speed of science. It's financial science. They want to make sure that they're the breadwinners coming out of this. But, you know, I know there's, I guess you could say at times, grievances between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. But right now, in hearing what this lady is admitting to, every single person who took a dose, took a jab, they should be furious right now.
Exactly.
Because she's admitting they did nothing to secure their safety in this jab. Sorry, we're still on YouTube, so you know I'm still being cautious of my words here. But anybody who got any volume of jabs from Pfizer should be absolutely furious right now, because that company put their life at risk with the speed of science as their reasoning.
Yeah, and are any of those people going to get an apology from Pfizer? Absolutely not, Sid. You know, much less compensation or what have you. You're right. They should be furious. I do think, again, I go back to my phrase, the COVID Karens out there, there is kind of like a vaccination cult. You know, they still socially distance. They still wear masks, even if they're by themselves outdoors. And they'll see no wrong in this, even though it's coming from the horse's mouth. I don't know how big that percentage is, but to them, this is like a religion. This is a mindset that they subscribe to. As I've said before, much like a Muslim lady that wears the hijab, a Sikh gentleman wearing the turban, a Christian wearing a cross. You're saying I'm on Team Islam, Team Sikhism, Team Christianity. These people are saying I'm on Team Big Science, Team Big Government, Team Big Lockdowns, because it's all for my own good. And then you listen to that damning testimony, and I wonder if it even moves a needle with these people, Sid.
Well, and you know, the way I see it, and I don't mean to be too, or I don't mean to be insulting it ever, but there are three kinds of people out there. There are sheep, there are shepherds, and there are wolves. And that's the honest to God assessment I see. And you've got wolves out there, and maybe I shouldn't allude to who those are at the moment. You've got sheep, and then you've got, you know, people who have their eyes open, who want to investigate and find out what is actually true. Yeah. And you don't take advice from a sheep, you know. It's going to do what it's told to do. It is submissive, and it will tell you the submissive path forward. There's no point listening to that argument because it's baseless. It is a reverberation from somebody else who, in all likelihood, is a wolf.
Yeah, and again, I think you nailed it with the point. Anyone that took this shot should be furious. I think if you're reasonably minded, you would be angered about this. But at the end of the day, don't expect even an apology from the big pharma companies promoting these vaccines. It's not going to happen. Sid, I think we should get to some live chats. Before we do, I think we have another ad break. And then, oh, pardon me, Sid?
Oh, I was going to say, I think after this ad break, we're going to be jumping off YouTube. I believe, unless I get corrected, we'll be getting off YouTube. That way we can speak perhaps a little more openly. I think we covered it fairly well without going over the line so far, but just in case, make sure you hop over to Rumble or another platform that isn't YouTube.
Yeah, don't blame us, folks. The devil is making us do it. So, in any event, Mr. Producer, do we have another ad to air?
Summer is over. Some are even saying it might never return. According to the Prime Minister, this is no time to be joking around. In Switzerland, they're saying you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. German guy. Germany. Germany never did anything wrong. Not that I can recall. Just like the doc said, don't ever go to 2020.
Find out in 30 years!
Dr. Fauci. Yeah, it must have been him.
Dr. Fauci, give us vaccines.
If freedom isn't free, but it has the word free in it, is freedom dumb? Maybe it is, but at times like these, we can only look to our leaders to get us out of it. rebelnewsstore.com.
Well, there you have High Energy Andrew Says, looking quite dapper. I think that's his yacht rock radio ensemble. But, you know, I mentioned this to Sheila yesterday that